At 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., stands a grand and imposing building with gleaming white walls that shimmer under the sun. This is the White House, the residence and workplace of every U.S. president. But what many people might not know is that beyond being the home of the nation's leader, the White House is also considered America's most famously haunted house, where spirits are said to roam freely from room to room. What's interesting is that the White House doesn't shy away from these ghostly tales. In fact, ever since First Lady Mary Todd, Lincoln held a in the 1860s and claimed to have contacted the spirit of her deceased son. Willie, supernatural stories have become an unofficial part. Everyone from presidents and security guards to visiting foreign dignitaries have shared their eerie experiences within its historic walls. The First family shares ghost stories. The White House Historical Association's website even features some of the ghostly encounters experienced by past First families. Former First Lady Michelle Obama once recounted, during an event with children at the White House, a strange and unsettling sound that woke her and President Obama in the middle of the night. They got up and searched the residence but found nothing. What was even more spine-chilling was that some of her family members reported feeling something inexplicably nibbling on their toes at night. In 2018, Jenna Bush, daughter of President George W. Bush, shared a similar chilling memory during a radio interview. One night, she and her twin sister Barbara were fast asleep when their phone suddenly rang, jolting them awake. Soon after, they heard clear piano music in the style of the 1920s, coming from the fireplace. This happened every night for an entire week. Terrified, the sisters asked the White House staff if the place was haunted. The staff casually replied, "Oh, that's normal around here. But don't worry, they're friendly spirits." Back in 1986, President Ronald Reagan hosted a state dinner for Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and shared his own eerie tale. He said his dog would bark frantically at the entrance to the Lincoln bedroom and refuse to go in. His daughter and son-in-law had also reportedly seen a ghostly presence there. This made Reagan seriously wonder whether the room was truly haunted. The Lincoln bedroom, a suite of guest rooms in the White House, is decorated with lavish furnishings selected by Mary Todd Lincoln herself, including a carved bed known as the Lincoln bed. While there's no proof Lincoln ever slept in it, this room is considered the place where his spirit is most often seen. President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on Good Friday, April 14, 1865, at Ford's Theater in Washington, and died the following day. Since then, his ghost has reportedly been seen frequently in the White House, especially in the Lincoln bedroom and the Oval Office. He remains one of the most commonly cited and beloved spirits. Roger Clinton, President Bill Clinton's brother, publicly stated he once felt Lincoln's presence in the White House. Former First Lady Grace Coolidge and Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands also claimed to have seen Lincoln's ghost. In fact, Queen Wilhelmina was so shocked during her encounter that she fainted. During one Halloween Q&A session, Chief Usher Gary Walters was asked if these stories were real. His answer was straightforward. Although there's no official record, the stories are absolutely true. Churchill meets Lincoln. Among all the Lincoln ghost stories, none is more legendary than the one involving British Prime Minister Winston Churchill during World War II. In 1941, with war raging across Europe, Churchill flew to the United States after Christmas for a 3-week state visit. He got along famously with President Franklin D. Roosevelt, often chatting late into the night. Roosevelt offered Churchill a stay in the White House, assigning him, of all places, the Lincoln bedroom. Churchill had a nightly routine to unwind from the day's stress: a hot bath, a glass of scotch, and a cigar. One night, after his bath and with his cigar in hand, he walked into the bedroom and suddenly saw a man leaning thoughtfully against the fireplace. Who could have gotten into this heavily guarded room? Churchill was startled. Looking closely, he was even more shocked to realize the figure resembled none other than President Abraham Lincoln. But Churchill, a wartime leader known for his nerves of steel, quickly composed himself. Removing his cigar from his mouth, he politely greeted the figure. "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Lincoln said nothing, just smiled gently, and then vanished into thin air. The next morning, Churchill told everyone he had met Lincoln's ghost, and promptly refused to sleep in that room again. He insisted on moving to the Queen's bedroom across the hall. Sounds like a fascinating tale, doesn't it? Believe it or not, this story is not urban legend, but officially listed on the website of the National Constitution Center, respected institution located at Philadelphia's Independence Hall, where both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were debated and signed. That gives the story a good dose of historical credibility. Lincoln's premonitions of his death. Interestingly, Lincoln's ghost stories didn't begin after his death. He reportedly foresaw his own demise 3 times. Shortly after becoming president in 1860, Lincoln once looked into a mirror at home and saw not one, but 2 reflections of himself, one clear and normal, the other pale and ghostly. Puzzled, he told Mary about it. She interpreted the vision to mean that he would win re-election, but might not live to complete his second term. As history shows, she was tragically correct. In early 1865, just months before his assassination, Lincoln told his close friend Ward Hill Layman about a vivid dream. "About 10 days ago," he said, "I fell asleep very late and had a dream. Everything was deathly quiet. I heard people sobbing softly as though mourning. I got up and walked downstairs to the East Room. There I saw a casket with a covered body, guarded by soldiers and surrounded by mourners. I asked a soldier, 'Who died in the White House?' And he answered, 'The president? He was killed by an assassin.' 4 months later, that dream became a tragic reality." Not long before his death, spiritualists also warned Lincoln that someone intended to kill him. Lincoln, always composed, responded that everyone dies eventually, and that he was ready, whether by dagger or disease. "There's no better preparation for death," he said, "than to live as Christ advised, ready at any moment." This wasn't pessimism, it was faith. Lincoln believed deeply in divine will. In his second inaugural address on March 4, 1865, he said the Civil War was God's punishment for 250 years of slavery, which had built America's wealth. He concluded, "Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice, toward none, with charity for all. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in." Sadly, Lincoln didn't live to see the war end. Perhaps his spirit lingers out of unfinished concern for the nation. And perhaps that's why sightings of his ghosts continue to this day. None more famous than the haunting photograph with his widow Mary. The spirit photograph. The Civil War left countless American families grieving. Many turned to spiritual mediums for comfort and communication with the dead. This gave rise to spirit photography, photos that allegedly captured the spirits of the deceased. One of the most famous spirit photographers of the time was William H. Mumler. He claimed he accidentally discovered his camera could capture spirits, but that their appearance in photos depended on the sitter's luck, not his skill. Word spread quickly, and people flocked to his studio in hopes of capturing a final image with a lost loved one. Mumler's photos made him wealthy, but also drew fierce criticism. Other photographers accused him of fraud, saying he merely used double exposure techniques. He was taken to court for fraud, but won the case. The judge, after personally visiting Mumler's studio, found no evidence of deception. With legal approval in hand, Mumler's business boomed, and one day, Mary Todd Lincoln herself visited. The result was a stunning photo. Mary sits solemnly, while Lincoln's translucent figure stands behind her, resting his hands gently on her shoulders, gazing at her with deep affection. Unlike the weary and sickly president Americans remembered, this Lincoln looks younger, peaceful, and full of life. Some experts claim the photo couldn't have been faked with the double exposure methods available at the time, especially because Lincoln's body is behind Mary, but his hands rest in front of her. In a pre-Photoshop era, such seamless layering was nearly impossible. So, could the photo be real? At the Indiana State Museum, which houses the photo, it's described as a portrait of Mary Todd Lincoln, widowed and still loved, watched over by the spirit of her husband. Other presidential spirits. Lincoln isn't the only president said to return from beyond. President Andrew Jackson, the 7th president, is another commonly mentioned spirit. His former bedroom is considered one of the most haunted rooms in the White House. Jackson was a fiery man, a military general known for his temper. Mary Todd Lincoln once claimed to see him stomping around the hallways angrily. During Eisenhower's presidency, Jackson's ghost reportedly returned again. President Harry Truman even wrote in a June 1945 letter that he heard ghostly footsteps in the corridors. The sound of someone entering the study, windows rustling, and floors creaking. Though he couldn't see anyone, he imagined Jackson fiercely debating with the two Roosevelts.
Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Share it, because some stories are meant to be discovered together. And stay curious. I'll see you in the next chapter.